If you've ever wanted to go on an African safari, feed stingrays in Polynesia, on the beautiful island of Bora Bora, climb Machu Picchu in the high Andes Mountains of Peru, or explore lava tubes on the big island of Hawaii. Organizing travel adventures is my wife's passion. But that's not all she's interested in. She also loves archaeology and ancient history. So she organized this trip to Greece to visit some of its oldest and most interesting historic sites. After resting at this lovely seaside hotel in Glyfada, known as the Riviera of Athens, you drive to the Peloponnese, a large peninsula adjacent to the mainland, separated by this canal near Corinth. The canal was started by the Roman Emperor Nero in 67 AD, but not completed until 1893. The first stop is Epidaurus, where she arranged to stay at this beautiful lodge. Epidaurus is famous for being the healing center of the classical world, and for this 15,000-seat theater constructed in the 4th century BC. It has exceptional acoustics, which permit almost perfect sound of an unamplified spoken word for all spectators to hear. And the view of the lush landscape behind the theater was an integral part of the theater itself. Boy, what a beautiful setting. Not far from Epidaurus is the ancient city of Mycenae. What's interesting about Mycenae is that it was once a military city-state which dominated southern Greece between 3600 and 3100 years ago. Entrance to Mycenae is through the Lion Gate, which is the sole surviving piece of Mycenaean giant stone construction. According to Greek mythology, Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, led a 10-year war against the Trojans 3,200 years ago and won due to the Trojan horse deception. Turns out, there was a city of Troy, which was excavated in 1870 by a German archaeologist, Heinrich Schliemann, at the site in Turkey. Northwest of Mycenae is Olympia, site of the original Olympic Games. According to Greek mythology, the Games began over 2,700 years ago and were dedicated to the god Zeus. The original Olympian Zeus statue was 40 feet tall, covered in gold, and one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It's an amazing experience to enter the stadium, where games were held once every 4 years, and continued uninterrupted for over 1,000. Even wars were stopped during the games to allow athletes to compete. Having finished seeing the highlights of the Peloponnese, you drive north over this bridge, up this valley, to Delphi, this picturesque hillside town near Mount Parnassus. Next to modern Delphi is ancient Delphi, which the Greeks believed to be the center of the world. These are the remains of the temple of Apollo, where the oracle, who was a priestess, would sit and prophesy on all matters such as wars or public policy. Delphi was also used as a central bank for the Greek city-states, with the most famous being the restored treasury of Athens. Unfortunately, in 85 BC, the Roman dictator Sulla stripped Delphi of all its treasures. From Delphi, you drive north, up the central agricultural valley, to Meteora, to visit its famous monasteries and stay at this hotel. Originally there were 12 of these cliffhangers, but now there are only 6 remaining. Prior to building these monasteries, the monks lived in caves, such as this one. But they soon realized it is better to build on top of the pinnacles. This one is quite a climb for the pilgrims. Having survived Meteora, you continue to drive north to Vergina to see the tomb of Philip II of Macedonia, since he is the father of Alexander the Great. This is the entrance to the tomb complex. Here's Philip's tomb, his gold crown, and in this gold box were his remains. Very near Vergina are the ruins of Pella, which Philip replaced as the capital of his kingdom. This is where Alexander the Great was raised. Take a look at these original mosaic floors. Having explored mainland Greece, you fly to the island of Mykonos. What a beautiful island. Plus, you'll love the great food and drink. But what's really interesting is Delos, a small island next to Mykonos, since in Greek mythology it is the birthplace of Apollo and one of the most important archaeological sites in Greece. Just make sure you don't go during any Greek holidays, since there'll be no boats to Delos. To get to the next island of Santorini, you take this modern high-speed ferry. Santorini, originally called Thera, is what remains after one of the largest recorded volcanic explosions 3,500 years ago. When the volcano exploded, it created this huge central lagoon, 7.5 miles long by 4.3 miles wide, and surrounded by 1,000-foot cliffs. The main town is called Thera, which clings to the top of the cliff and overlooks the central lagoon. A popular theory is that Santorini was the source of the myth of the lost city of Atlantis. And for the more adventurous, in addition to walking or riding a burro, you can take the tram down to the harbor. These are some of the preserved ruins of the ancient town, possibly dating to the 4th millennium BC. From Santorini, you take another ferry south to Crete, which is the largest and most populous of all the Greek islands. Crete was the center of the Minoan civilization, which archaeologists believe reached its apex around 3,400 years ago with the Mycenaean invasion of Crete. The most interesting site was at Knossos, the legendary palace completed near the end of the Minoan civilization. It may have looked like this. Some suggest it's the mythical labyrinth due to its elaborate maze-like 1,700-room structure built for King Minos to hold the Minotaur, a creature that was half man and half bull. Speaking of bulls, the Minoans were also known to practice the ritual sport of bull leaping, whereby the leaper would grasp the horns of a charging bull to jerk his neck upwards, then somersault over the bull. Wow, that would be something to see. Lots of work continues to be done to reconstruct Knossos. Including this restoration of what is known as a throne room. Gee, it seems to be a pretty small chair for a king. The other very interesting site is the fortress of Phasos, constructed around the same time as Knossos. Very little is known about Phasos. It is mentioned in Homer's epic, the Iliad, as participating in the Trojan War. From Crete, you fly back to Athens, where my wife arranged to stay at this hotel, since the room had a perfect view of the Acropolis. The next morning, you go to see the temple of Olympian Zeus. Construction of his colossal temple began in the 6th century BC, but wasn't completed until the 2nd century AD, over 600 years later, by the Roman Emperor Hadrian. The National Archaeological Museum was established in 1829 and is considered to be one of the greatest museums in the world. This is Poseidon from around 600 BC. Or here is a modest Aphrodite with Cupid, god of love, and Pan, famous for his sexual powers. Look at these penetrating eyes of this bronze head, found in the ship which sunk in 240 BC. Remember Heinrich Schliemann, who discovered the city of Troy? He also discovered and excavated the royal tombs at Mycenae. These are some of the gold objects he took. Including this famous mask of Agamemnon. The Acropolis is probably the most visited site in Athens, and one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. This is how it may have looked originally. Here's the entrance to the Acropolis. Once at the top, there it is, the famous Parthenon, dedicated to the Greek goddess Athena, whom the people of Athens consider their patroness. The other existing building is this temple, dedicated to a Greek legendary king, built around 400 BC. What's interesting about this building is the corner known as the Porch of the Charites, since it was designed for the necks of the maidens to support the weight of the porch. The amphitheater adjacent to the Acropolis was built in 161 AD by a wealthy Greek in memory for his wife. It seats 5,000 and is still used as a venue for music and concerts. So, if you like to visit ancient cities, relax on beautiful Aegean and Mediterranean islands, explore museums, drive around the countryside, visit some very unusual monasteries, and have some great food, particularly the lamb chops. Greece is definitely a country you should visit. To learn more about Greece and other adventure travel, contact Elaine at this number.